Last time on Heartland Ridge Ranch. At the Willow Creek Fair, Ellie Ridge made a promise she refused to break. When she met Walter Green, a widower who had stopped entering the town's beloved pie contest after losing his wife, Ellie saw something no one else could. A man who had forgotten how to hope. With the help of the Ridge family, Ellie reminded him that love never truly leaves us. And because of one little girl's promise, hope returned. But now, rodeo season has arrived at Heartland Ridge, and this time, 2 Ridge boys are stepping into the arena. Bernat, 8 Seconds to Glory. Chapter 1. Rodeo season. At Heartland Ridge Ranch, rodeo season changed everything. The air felt different. The crew talked louder. The town buzzed with anticipation. Even the horses seemed to carry extra energy, because everyone in Willow Creek knew what was coming: the summer rodeo. And at the Ridge House, that meant one thing: excitement, lots of it, mostly from one very small cowboy. Beau Ridge burst into the kitchen before sunrise wearing boots, jeans, and a toy belt buckle that barely fit around his waist. He planted both hands on the kitchen island. "Mama." Charlie looked up from pancake batter. "Yes?" "When's the rodeo?" Charlie smiled. "This weekend." Beau's eyes widened. "This weekend?" "Yes." Beau nodded seriously. "Good." Then he turned and marched toward the door. Charlie blinked. "Where are you going?" Beau didn't stop. "To train." Silence. Wyatt lowered his coffee. "To train for what?" Beau turned like the answer should be obvious. "The rodeo." Mason nearly laughed into his coffee. Sadie gasped dramatically. "Oh no." Ellie sighed. "What now?" Beau straightened. "I'm competing." Complete silence. Charlie slowly blinked. Wyatt stared. Mason froze. Sadie's mouth fell open. Then, "What?" everyone said at once. Beau frowned. "Why is everybody surprised?" Wyatt knelt to eye level. "You want to compete?" "Yes, sir." "In what?" Beau looked offended. "The sheep ride." Mason immediately looked away to hide a grin. Charlie folded her arms. "Wyatt." Her voice had that tone, half concerned, half trying not to laugh. "He's 4. Wyatt nodded. "I'm aware." Charlie pointed at Beau. "He still sleeps with a stuffed horse?" Beau frowned. "Not every night." Sadie whispered to Ellie. "It's every night." Ellie whispered back. "I know." Before Charlie could say anything else, Sadie jumped into the conversation. "He should do it." Charlie stared. "Sadie." "What?" "He is 4, Sadie shrugged. He's also stubborn." Wyatt muttered, "That part's true." Beau puffed out his chest. "I'm brave." Mason smiled at that. Because Beau believed it. Completely, without hesitation. The kind of courage only little kids seemed able to have. Pure, uncomplicated. Later that morning, the ranch crew worked near the south pasture. Caleb repaired fencing while Tyler unloaded feed. Hannah checked tack nearby. Mason helped Wyatt sort equipment for the upcoming rodeo. Roping gear, saddles, travel supplies. The familiar preparations stirred something inside Mason, something old, something restless. Tyler noticed first. He leaned against the trailer. "You thinking about entering?" Mason looked up. "What?" Tyler smirked. "The rodeo." Mason shrugged. "Maybe." Tyler studied him. That wasn't a no. Interesting. Nearby, Beau sprinted into the pasture, helmet on, backwards, vest crooked, determination at maximum levels. Everyone stopped. Tyler stared. "What?" Caleb closed his eyes. Oh no. Beau ran straight toward a sheep grazing near the fence, not one of theirs. A neighbor's sheep temporarily kept on the property. The sheep looked up, concerned. Reasonably so. Beau pointed. "You." The sheep blinked. Beau charged. 3 steps later, the sheep bolted. Beau lunged, missed, and landed face first in grass. Silence. Then Tyler burst out laughing. Caleb followed. Then Hannah. Even Wyatt failed to hide a smile. Beau popped up covered in grass, completely unfazed. I almost had him, Sadie screamed from the fence. You were so close. Ellie buried her face in her hands. Mason, please help him. Mason walked over, trying not to laugh. Too late. He was smiling. Big. He crouched beside Beau. You okay? Beau nodded. Yep. Then his expression changed. More serious. Mason? Yeah? Beau looked toward the sheep, then back at his older brother, voice suddenly smaller. What if I fall at the rodeo? The pastor went quiet, because beneath all the confidence, there it was. The real question, the honest one. Mason saw it immediately. Fear, not huge, not overwhelming, but real. He smiled softly, then knelt lower so they were eye to eye. You scared? Beau hesitated, then gave the tiniest nod. Mason smiled. Good. Beau frowned. Good? Mason rested a hand on his shoulder. Means you understand it matters. Beau stared, thinking hard. Mason continued. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. Beau listened carefully. It means holding on anyway. Silence. Then Beau nodded slowly, as if storing the words somewhere important. Hold on anyway. Mason smiled. Exactly. Beau looked back at the sheep, then squared his tiny shoulders. Determination returned. Stronger this time. Okay. He pointed at the sheep again. This ain't over. The sheep immediately ran farther away. Tyler doubled over laughing. In his laughter-filled Heartland Ridge Ranch, Wyatt watched his sons quietly. One learning to become a cowboy, the other learning to become a man. And though he didn't say it aloud, he already knew this rodeo was going to change both of them. Chapter 2. I want to ride by dinner that evening. Beau had told everyone exactly how the sheep chase had gone. 3 times. Each retelling became more dramatic. By version 3, the sheep had apparently become the fastest sheep in Wyoming. Sadie believed every word. Ellie did not. Charlie set bowls on the table while Wyatt carved roast beef. The usual sounds filled the kitchen. Plates, laughter, conversation, home. Then Mason cleared his throat. That got Wyatt's attention immediately, because Mason rarely interrupted dinner unless something mattered. Wyatt looked up. Yeah, son. Mason sat a little straighter, calmer than he felt. I want to enter the rodeo. Silence. Complete silence. Even Beau stopped chewing. Charlie slowly lowered her fork. Sadie froze. Ellie looked between Mason and Wyatt. Tyler, Hannah, and Caleb, who had stayed for dinner, quietly exchanged glances. Everyone knew. This mattered. Wyatt didn't react immediately. He simply studied Mason. What event? Mason already knew the answer. He had known for weeks. Bull riding. Charlie closed her eyes. Sadie whispered. Oh boy. Beau's eyes widened. Bulls? Mason nodded. Yes. Beau looked deeply impressed. That's way bigger than sheep. Fair. Very fair. Wyatt leaned back in his chair, not angry, not cold, just thinking. His voice stayed calm. Why? That question surprised Mason. Not what are you thinking? Not absolutely not, just why? Because Wyatt Ridge always wanted truth first. Mason exhaled slowly. I don't know. Wyatt raised an eyebrow. That's not true. Mason looked down at his hands, then spoke honestly. I need to prove something. Charlie's expression softened. Wyatt stayed quiet. What? Mason looked at his father. The words came harder now. To myself. Silence filled the kitchen again. Mason continued. I've grown a lot this year. His voice was steady, but vulnerable. Abby helped me believe in myself. He glanced briefly toward the window, toward the fading light. But believing it inside, he swallowed. And proving it when everyone's watching feels different. Wyatt listened carefully. Every word. Mason finally said the part he hadn't fully admitted aloud. I want to know what happens when fear shows up. Charlie's heart tightened. Mason continued. I want to know if I still show up. No one spoke because everyone understood. This wasn't about bull riding, not really. This was about identity, manhood, courage, becoming. Wyatt folded his hands, then spoke quietly. Son, Mason met his eyes. This isn't about whether you're brave. That caught Mason off guard. Wyatt continued. I already know you are. The words landed deep, hard, true. Wyatt's voice remained steady. I've seen you work through storms. He nodded toward the ranch. I've watched you carry responsibility most boys your age never see. Then toward the family. I've watched how you care for these people. A pause. You don't need a bull to prove courage. Mason felt emotion rising in his chest. Because this was why Wyatt mattered. He always saw deeper. Charlie reached over and touched Mason's hand. Gentle, warm. Mason, her voice softened. We're not afraid because we doubt you. Mason looked at her. We're afraid because we love you. That hit even harder, because it was so simple and so true. Before Mason could answer, a tiny voice cut through the tension. I'm still riding the sheep. Silence. Everyone turned. Beau sat upright in his chair, completely serious. Wyatt stared. Mason rides bulls. Beau pointed to himself. I ride sheep. Sadie slammed the table. That's my guy. Ellie sighed. Of course. Beau folded his arms. We both brave. The tension broke instantly. Tyler laughed. Caleb shook his head. Even Hannah smiled. Charlie covered a laugh. Mason looked at Beau, then smiled. Because somehow, his little brother had said exactly what everyone needed. Later that night, Wyatt found Mason alone by the corral. Stars stretched across Heartland Ridge. The ranch quieted. Wyatt stepped beside him. Neither spoke for a while. Then Wyatt broke the silence. You really want this? Not a question. Mason nodded. Yes, sir. Wyatt looked toward the dark pasture, then back at his son. Then we train. Mason blinked. What? Wyatt's expression softened. I still don't like bull riding. A faint smile touched his face. Never will. Mason waited. Then Wyatt placed a strong hand on his shoulder. But if you're stepping into that arena, his voice deepened. You won't step in unprepared. Mason felt something shift inside him. Relief, gratitude, resolve. Thank you. Wyatt gave his shoulder a firm squeeze. One condition. Mason nodded. Anything. Wyatt's eyes narrowed slightly. No pride. Mason frowned. What do you mean? Wyatt looked directly at him. You ride for courage? A pause. Not ego? The words settled deeply, because Wyatt had seen it. The danger. The wrong motivation. Mason understood immediately. Yes, sir. Wyatt nodded once. Good. Then he looked toward the house where Beau's voice suddenly shouted from inside. I found a faster sheep. Wyatt closed his eyes. Mason laughed. And for a brief moment, both forgot about the rodeo. Because at Heartland Ridge, there was always something else waiting. Chapter 3, Training Day. By Tuesday morning, training had officially begun. Wyatt believed in preparation, Caleb believed in discipline, Tyler believed in repetition, and Beau believed in chasing sheep. All 4 approaches were currently happening at Heartland Ridge Ranch at the same time. Mason stood inside the practice pen near the south pasture. Wyatt and Tyler had set up a mechanical bucking barrel, an old training rig used to simulate the violent motion of a bull. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Tyler tightened a strap and stepped back. This is where you learn fast. Mason adjusted his gloves. Or fall fast. Tyler grinned. That too. Nearby, Wyatt leaned against the fence, watching, observing, not saying much. That usually meant he was paying attention to everything. Tyler climbed onto the fence rail. First lesson. Mason looked up. Balance? Tyler shook his head. Well, no. Grip. No. Mason frowned. What then? Tyler's expression shifted. More serious now. Your mind. Silence. Mason listened. Tyler continued. The bull isn't your first opponent. That caught Mason's attention. Then what is? Tyler looked him straight in the eye. Panic. The word hung there. Simple, true. Tyler tapped the side of his head. Your body follows this. A pause. If this quits, he pointed to Mason's chest. Everything else follows. Wyatt gave the slightest nod. Good. Tyler understood. Mason climbed onto the bucking barrel, settled his weight, wrapped his hand. Tyler moved toward the lever. When it starts moving, don't fight everything. Mason frowned. What do you mean? Tyler smiled. You'll see. That was not reassuring, not even a little. The barrel lurched violently. Mason nearly lost position immediately. His hips shifted too far, weight wrong, shoulders tense. Tyler killed the motion. Mason jumped off. Breathing harder than expected, Tyler folded his arms. What happened? Mason exhaled. I tried to control it. Tyler nodded. Exactly. Mason frowned. That's bad? Tyler grinned. Yes. Mason blinked. Tyler stepped closer. You don't control chaos. He pointed toward the rig. You move with it. That landed. Because suddenly Mason understood. This wasn't brute force. It was rhythm, timing, control without rigidity. Very different. From across the pasture came chaos. Predictably. Bow, helmet on, vest crooked, determination at maximum. He stood in front of 3 sheep, hands on hips. Sadie served as hype crew. You got this. Ellie rubbed her forehead. Please don't yell. Sadie yelled louder. That wasn't yelling, Caleb muttered under his breath. I disagree. Beau slowly approached the nearest sheep. Tiny steps, focused expression. Mason paused to watch. Tyler noticed. You're distracted. Mason smiled. Can you blame me? Fair point. Because what happened next was incredible. Beau actually grabbed the sheep for half a second. Then the sheep exploded forward, dragging Beau 3 feet through dirt before he let go. Dust flew everywhere. Silence. Then Beau stood up, covered head to toe in dirt. Tiny cowboy hat somehow still on. He spit out grass. I held on, Sadie screamed. He did it. Ellie stared. Heck, he kind of did. Charlie, watching from the porch, covered her mouth to hide laughter. Even Hannah smiled. Later that afternoon, Mason tried the barrel again. This time different. Less force, more feel. He remembered Tyler's words, don't fight everything, move with it. The rig started, violent movement, forward, twist, drop. Mason adjusted, centered, recovered, held, longer, better. Tyler watched closely, then smiled. There it was, progress. After the run ended, Mason jumped down, breathing hard. Tyler nodded. Better. Mason wiped sweat from his brow. I felt it. Tyler smiled. Good. Then his expression sharpened. Now the hard part. Mason frowned. What's harder than that? Tyler looked toward the open pasture, toward the horizon, toward something bigger. When the crowd shows up, silence. That hit differently. Because Mason knew this wasn't just physical anymore. Noise, pressure, expectations, eyes on him. That was the real arena. That evening, Abby found Mason sitting on the fence with his guitar resting beside him. He wasn't playing, just thinking. She climbed up beside him, quietly, comfortably. You're overthinking. Mason looked over. How do you always know? Abby smiled. Because your forehead does that thing. My forehead? She pointed at that wrinkle. Mason laughed. I have a wrinkle. You do when you're worried. He shook his head. Unbelievable. Abby studied him. You scared? The same question he had asked Beau. Funny. Mason looked out over Heartland Ridge, then answered honestly. Yes, Abby nodded. Not surprised. Good. Then she said softly, maybe courage isn't showing up fearless. Mason looked at her. Abby smiled. Maybe it's showing up scared. A pause. And climbing on anyway. Silence. Then Mason smiled, because suddenly he heard something familiar. Beau. Abby blinked. What? Mason laughed. That's what I told Beau. Abby smiled. Sounds like good advice. Mason looked toward the darkening sky, then back at Abby, and for the first time since training began, he felt calm. Because maybe courage wasn't about eliminating fear. Maybe it never was. Maybe it was simply this. Holding on anyway. Chapter 4, 8 Seconds. Saturday arrived faster than anyone wanted, rodeo day. At sunrise, Heartland Ridge Ranch felt unusually quiet. Not empty, not still, just focused. The kind of quiet that comes before something important. Charlie moved through the kitchen making breakfast, though she noticed something immediately. Mason wasn't eating much. Neither was Beau. That worried her. For very different reasons. Beau sat at the table wearing his tiny protective vest. Helmet beside him, boots already on. He stared at his pancakes. Charlie frowned. That alone was alarming. Beau never ignored pancakes. Ever. She knelt beside him. You okay, buddy? Beau nodded too quickly. Yes, ma'am. Charlie softened. You nervous? Beau looked at his plate. Silence. Then a tiny nod. Charlie smiled gently. Me too. Beau looked up. You're nervous? She brushed hair from his forehead. A little. Why? Charlie smiled. Because brave people do scary things. Beau thought about that, then quietly asked, even little cowboys? Charlie kissed his forehead. Especially little cowboys. Across the kitchen, Mason leaned against the counter. Coffee untouched. Thoughts loud. Too loud. Wyatt noticed. Of course he noticed. He walked over. Walk with me. Not a request. Mason nodded. Yes, sir. Outside, morning sun stretched across the pasture. Father and son walked in silence for a while. Wyatt never rushed important conversations. Finally, he spoke. What's the loudest voice in your head right now? Mason exhaled. Fear, pressure, expectation, but one thought sat above everything. What if I fail? There it was, raw, honest. Wyatt nodded slowly. As in, fall off? Mason shook his head. No. A pause. What if I freeze? That hit deeper. Wyatt understood immediately. This wasn't about pain. It was about paralysis, about fear winning. Wyatt stopped walking, then turned toward him. Son. His voice stayed calm. Fear talks. Mason listened. It always will. Wind moved softly through the pasture. Wyatt continued. The question isn't whether fear speaks. A pause. It's which voice you listen to. The words landed hard, because Mason knew. He had heard fear before, on the ridge, in silence, in responsibility, in doubt, and every time someone had helped him hear truth louder. His parents, Abby, his family, God. Wyatt placed a firm hand on his shoulder. When that gate opens, his voice deepened. Don't ride to prove anything. Mason met his eyes. Then why ride? Wyatt smiled faintly. Ride free. Mason frowned. Free? Wyatt nodded. Not for applause. Not for pride. Not for pressure. Ride because you chose to step in. A pause. And because no matter what happens, his grip tightened slightly. You're already enough. Silence. Complete silence. Because those words broke straight through fear. Mason swallowed hard, emotion rising, then he nodded. He understood. Fully. By afternoon, the Willow Creek Rodeo arena roared with energy, bleachers packed, dust rising, music blasting, cowboys warming up, livestock handlers moving quickly, kids laughing, vendors shouting, everything felt alive. The announcer stepped to the microphone. Welcome to the Willow Creek Summer Rodeo, cheers erupted. Beau's eyes widened. Whoa! Sadie screamed louder than half the arena. This is amazing, Ellie sighed. It's very loud. Tyler laughed. Accurate. Then came the first event. The announcer grinned. And now... The crowd cheered immediately. Mutton bustin'. Beau froze. His turn. Reality hit. Hard. Very hard. He looked much smaller suddenly. Charlie knelt. Hey! Beau looked at her. Big eyes, little cowboy, very nervous. She smiled. You don't have to do this. Beau looked toward the sheep pen, then at the arena, then toward Mason. His big brother walked over, knelt beside him. No words at first. Just presence. Then, you scared? Beau gave a tiny nod. Mason smiled softly. Good. Beau blinked. The same word again. Mason squeezed his shoulder. What do brave cowboys do? Beau swallowed, then whispered. Hold on anyway. Mason smiled. That's right. Beau took a deep breath, then another, and slowly, the fear became determination. Again. Minutes later, Beau sat atop a fluffy white sheep. Helmet strapped, hands gripping wool. The crowd melted. Everyone adored him. The announcer laughed. Well, folks, this might be our smallest cowboy today. Huge cheers. Sadie stood screaming, That's my brother! Ellie covered her face. Tyler laughed so hard he nearly doubled over. Charlie clutched Wyatt's arm. Oh, Lord, Wyatt smiled. He's got this. The gate handler looked at Beau. You ready, cowboy? Beau yelled. Open it! The gate flew wide. Chaos exploded. The sheep launched forward like a missile. Beau bounced wildly. Left, right, up, down. The crowd roared. 1 second, 2, 3, 4. Beau slipped, tumbled safely into hay. Silence. Then Beau jumped up with both fists in the air. I did it! The arena erupted. Applause, laughter, cheers. The loudest yet. Beau ran straight toward the family. Tyler scooped him up. How long was that? The announcer checked. 4.2 seconds. Beau gasped. 4? Tyler grinned. 4.2. Beau looked stunned, then proud, very proud. I'm half as good as Mason. Mason laughed, pulled him into a hug. That's pretty good. Beau beamed. Best day ever. As evening approached, the energy shifted. Lighter events ended. Serious events began. The sun dipped lower. Dust glowed gold. The announcer's voice deepened. Ladies and gentlemen, Mason's stomach tightened. Bull riding begins in 10 minutes. Silence fell inside him. Tyler stepped beside him. You ready? Mason exhaled. Not really, but something inside had changed. Fear still spoke, but truth spoke louder. He looked toward the stands. Charlie, Wyatt, Ellie, Sadie, Beau, Caleb, Hannah, Abby, all watching, all believing. Abby caught his eyes. She smiled. No words, none needed. Mason closed his eyes. One breath, then another. When he opened them, calm, not fearless, steady, resolved. The announcer's voice thundered across the arena. Next rider. Mason stepped forward. Mason Ridge of Heartland Ridge Ranch. The crowd erupted, and as he walked toward the chute, one truth filled his mind. 8 seconds. Just 8 seconds. But sometimes 8 seconds can change everything. Chapter 5. The Ride. The world became strangely quiet as Mason approached the chute. Not literally. The arena still roared, crowds cheered, music played, cowboys shouted, but inside Mason, everything narrowed, the noise faded, until only a few things remained. His breathing, his heartbeat, and the bull. The animal beneath him was massive, nearly 2,000 pounds of muscle, power, and violent unpredictability. Dark brown, broad shoulders, pure force. Mason swallowed. A rodeo hand tightened the rope around his gloved hand. You good? Mason nodded. Yes, sir. But his pulse hammered. His hand flexed against the braided rope. Sweat dampened his palm despite the evening cool. Fear spoke, loud. What if you freeze? What if you fail? What if you let everyone down? The voice pressed hard. Then another voice answered. Wyatt. Fear talks. The question isn't whether fear speaks. It's which voice you listen to. Mason exhaled. One slow breath, then another. In the stands, Charlie gripped Wyatt's arm so tightly he was mildly concerned about circulation. Charlie stared at the chute. "Oh, I hate this." Wyatt kept his eyes forward. "I know." She looked at him. "How are you calm?" Wyatt gave the faintest smile. "I'm not." That surprised her. "You're not?" He shook his head once. "No." Charlie softened, because she knew. Wyatt simply carried nerves differently. Quieter. Deeper. She slipped her hand into his. He squeezed back. Nearby, Beau stood on the bleacher bench, helmet still on, because he refused to take it off. "That's Mason." Sadie raised both fists. "He's got this." Ellie clasped her hands, praying. Tyler stood beside Hannah, eyes locked on the chute. He knew what came next, and he knew how quickly things could go wrong. Hannah quietly reached for his hand. He squeezed hers. No words. None needed. Abby sat completely still, eyes fixed on Mason, heart pounding. She remembered sunrise on the ridge, the guitar, the quiet boy who doubted himself. And now, this. He had changed, grown, but beneath all of it, he was still Mason, good, gentle, strong, and somehow, in this moment, Abby knew something. No matter what happened next, she was already proud of him. The announcer's voice thundered across the arena. "Ladies and gentlemen," the crowd roared, "riding for Heartland Ridge Ranch." Cheers grew louder. "Mason Ridge!" The gate crew got ready. One handler leaned in. "Ready?" Mason tightened his grip. His free hand lifted. He heard his own voice. Steady, clear. "Let's go." The gate exploded open. Chaos, pure chaos. The bull launched forward like an earthquake with legs. Mason's body snapped violently. 1 second. The bull twisted left, hard. Mason adjusted, weight centered, stay loose, move with it. Tyler's voice echoed, "Don't fight everything, move with it." 2 seconds, the bull kicked high. Dust exploded, the crowd screamed. 3 seconds. Violent spin, Mason nearly lost his seat. Charlie gasped. Sadie screamed, Beau yelled, "Hold on!" 4 seconds, the bull bucked again, higher, harder. Mason felt his hips slipping. No, not now. He recovered. Barely. 5 seconds. Pain shot through his shoulder. 6. The arena blurred. 7. Everything slowed, and suddenly fear vanished. Not because danger disappeared, because something inside changed. He stopped resisting, stopped proving, stopped striving, and simply rode, free, exactly as Wyatt said. No pressure, no expectations, just presence, just courage, just now. 8 seconds. The buzzer sounded, the crowd exploded, Mason released, launched clear, hit dirt hard, rolled, dust everywhere, silence, half a heartbeat. Then he stood. The arena erupted, absolute chaos, cheers, screams, applause. Mason staggered upright, breathing hard, dazed but smiling. He had done it. He had done it. The announcer nearly shouted into the microphone, 8.1 seconds. The crowd roared louder. Sadie lost her mind. "He did it!" Beau screamed like a champion. 8 seconds! Ellie cried. Charlie cried. Even Caleb smiled. Tyler laughed and slapped the railing. Hannah grinned. And Abby... Abby covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Because she knew. This wasn't just a ride. This was a moment, a becoming. Mason barely had time to process anything before Beau came charging. Full speed, tiny boots flying. "Mason!" Beau crashed into him. Mason caught him with a laugh. Beau's eyes were huge, wild with excitement. "You did 8 seconds," Mason grinned. "I did." Beau puffed out his chest proudly. "I did 4, Mason laughed. 4.2. Beau nodded. "Half as good." Mason pulled him close. "No." Beau blinked. "No." Mason smiled. "Pretty amazing." Beau considered that, then grinned. "Yeah, fair, very fair." As the arena roared around them, Mason looked up into the stands, straight toward Wyatt. Their eyes met. No words. None needed. Wyatt gave one small nod. Pride, respect, love, everything in one gesture. And Mason understood. This had never been about conquering a bull. It had been about conquering fear. And tonight, fear had not won. Chapter 6. Glory. The cheers seemed endless. Even after the next rider entered the chute, people still talked about Mason Ridge, the hometown ranch kid, the musician, Wyatt Ridge's oldest son, the boy who had climbed onto a bull and stayed on. But for Mason, the noise around him had faded, because something inside him felt different now. Lighter. Clearer. As if something heavy he had carried for years had finally been set down. After the event ended, the Ridge family gathered behind the arena. Beau reached Mason first. Again, still wearing his helmet, still refusing to remove it. He wrapped both arms around Mason's waist. "You won," Mason laughed. "I don't know about that." Beau looked offended. "You did 8 seconds. Fair point, very fair point. Sadie nearly tackled him next. "I told everybody you'd do it." Ellie hugged him carefully. "I wasn't worried." Mason raised an eyebrow. Ellie smiled. "Okay, I was worried." That sounded more truthful. Charlie stepped forward for once, speechless, which almost never happened. She reached up and held Mason's face in both hands like she used to when he was little. Her eyes were wet, proud, emotional. "My boy." Mason swallowed. Charlie smiled through tears. "No," she corrected herself. "My young man." That hit hard because somehow those 3 words carried years inside them. Childhood, growth, responsibility, love, everything. Mason pulled her into a hug. Charlie held him tightly, like mothers do when their hearts are too full for words. Then Wyatt stepped forward. The others instinctively gave them space. Father and son, important moment. Wyatt stood there for a second, studying him. Then he said, "How do you feel?" Mason thought about it. About fear, pressure, the ride, the buzzer, the silence afterward. Then he answered honestly. "Free." Wyatt smiled. A real one, small, but full. "Good." Mason looked at him. "That's it?" Wyatt raised an eyebrow. "What were you expecting?" Mason laughed. "I don't know." Wyatt stepped closer, then pulled him into a firm embrace. Strong, steady, the kind of hug that said what words didn't need to. When Wyatt stepped back, his voice lowered. "Proud of you, son." Silence. Because those words mattered. Coming from Wyatt Ridge, they mattered deeply. Nearby, Tyler leaned toward Hannah. "Told you." Hannah crossed her arms. "Told me what?" Tyler smirked. "He had it in him." Hannah looked toward Mason, then toward Wyatt, then quietly said, "He always did." Tyler smiled. That was very Hannah. She saw people, even when they didn't see themselves. Abby waited until the crowd thinned, then approached Mason. Heart pounding. He turned, saw her, immediately smiled. That smile, the one she loved. "You okay?" he asked. Abby laughed softly. "I should be asking you that." Mason rubbed the back of his neck. "Fair." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Abby stepped closer, close enough that the arena disappeared. "You know what I saw tonight?" Mason shook his head. "What?" Abby smiled. "I saw the same boy from the ridge." Mason blinked. "Really?" She nodded. "Yes." Her voice softened. "You still have the same heart?" A pause. "But now," she looked directly into his eyes, "you know it's strong." Those words landed even deeper than applause, because Abby understood. Always. She rose onto her toes and kissed his cheek. Warm, gentle, perfect. Mason froze, then grinned like an idiot. Again. The awards ceremony began under glowing arena lights. The announcer stepped forward. "We have one final recognition tonight." The crowd quieted. The announcer smiled. For heart, courage, and crowd favorite, Beau immediately sat up, very interested. "This year's Junior Cowboy Award goes to..." Pause. Too long. Way too long. Sadie whispered, "Come on." The announcer grinned. "Beau Ridge." Silence. 1 second. Then chaos. Beau's mouth fell open. "No way." Tyler burst out laughing. Charlie gasped. Sadie screamed loud enough to frighten nearby livestock. "Beau!" Ellie clapped. Mason doubled over laughing. Wyatt closed his eyes, smiling. Of course. Beau walked to the stage like a champion, tiny boots, helmet still on. The crowd adored him. The announcer knelt. "Cowboy, you can take off the helmet." Beau frowned. "No." The crowd erupted with laughter. The announcer gave up immediately. Wise choice, he handed Beau a tiny trophy. Beau held it high. Victory, pure victory. The crowd roared. Then Beau marched straight back to Mason, holding the trophy up. "Mason." "Yeah?" Beau looked very serious. "We both won." Silence. Mason looked at the trophy, then at his little brother, and smiled. "Yeah." He pulled Beau close. "We did." Later that night, the Ridge family drove home beneath a blanket of stars. Beau slept in Charlie's lap, still clutching the trophy, still wearing the helmet. Nobody bothered removing it. Wyatt drove quietly. Charlie leaned against him, peaceful, content. Mason looked out the truck window toward the dark hills of Heartland Ridge, then toward the ridge where he often played guitar, and finally understood something. Courage wasn't about becoming fearless. It never had been. Courage was hearing fear and choosing truth anyway, choosing faith anyway, choosing to hold on anyway. As the ranch lights appeared in the distance, Mason smiled, because tonight had changed something, not just in him, in Beau too. 2 Ridge boys had stepped into the arena, and both had come home stronger. The end. Thank you for visiting Heartland Ridge Ranch. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Snowfall and Second Chances for more Western romance, unforgettable characters, and heartwarming stories from Heartland Ridge Ranch, where family legacy, Western romance, and second chances ride together.